Everybody, please forgive me for not wearing a shirt. It's really hot out here in Kansas, so you're just gonna have to suck it up if you're gonna watch this. I'm fairly sure I don't look that terrible, so hopefully that won't be too much for you to take with your eyes. Now, I wanted to make a video about my grandfather and his implications in the Vietnam War in terms of the drug war, but in general, the Vietnam War. I know that the drug war didn't really technically come into play at that time frame. Not exactly, but it definitely was getting started at that time frame. That was the purpose behind that, invasion, if you will, of a foreign country in the southeastern Orient. You see, we needed an area that could grow heroin. We needed something that was used upon other nations before, like China. See, China had such a problem with heroin that was influenced by the British Empire so they can maintain control on them. The Chinese, that is. Now, using that example in history, we were able to attack Vietnam under the excuse and guise of trying to stop the spread and influence of communism, which was far from the truth from what my grandfather explained. He said that we weren't at war with the Soviet Union. We were at war with their people and their ideology, so to speak. But in actuality, it was being, I guess you can say, at odds with a chess player. They weren't our enemy. I mean, they weren't certainly our friend at all. They were more like that guy that you go to the park and you play a chess game with. It's competition. That's all that was. You weren't trying to wipe them out. You're trying to find a way to solidify control over your people using that player as the boogeyman. Because ultimately, the pawns on the chessboard between you and that guy are the people of his nation and yours. So, with that being said, I want to go into it. I'm trying to keep it short and as well said as possible. I'm going to try to keep it as much to what he said to me so that it's, I guess you could say, more from his own voice. But again, please forgive me. He told all this to me when I was like 5 years old, so it's going to come out a little gargled. I apologize ahead of time. So, the war begins and the excuse is communism. We just touched over that, alright? When it came to communism, yeah, it was spreading in there, but it was because Western power is more capitalistic at the time. So it's very easy to nurture something when you already have a need for, I guess you could say, attention. And the concept of communism is so beautiful to those who are neglected. Alright? That's the reason why that Bolshevik communism was so easy to, force upon the Russian peoples, as well as the other nations of people that were underneath them at the time. And it's simply, you have you have hate that is festered, whether it be by those same people that are thrusting communism upon them, or by someone else. We festered that hate. We became the boogeyman of the Vietnamese, of the southeastern Orient. The Western powers were the scary bad guys. Let's not get that twisted. We were not the good guys to them. Maybe to certain ones of them, but let's be frank. We slaughtered and genocided a lot of people for pretty much drugs and money. Blood money. Anyways, a foreign culture causes a social barrier. During World War II, it was very difficult to get our own troops to fight the enemy, which were the Germans at the time. And the reason why it was so difficult is many of our own people, also, you have Germany and, Italy, of course. Point is, most of our people were of Germanic influence, Anglo influence, Italian influence. You had all these Europeans fighting Europeans. Okay? You're having people who have mannerisms that are nigh the exact same. It was easy for them to communicate and therefore come to a peaceful agreement as opposed to slaughter, just blind ignorance and beastliness and trying to kill and eviscerate them. It's a lot easier when you can just be like, hey man, I don't want to do this. And I don't think you do either. No, I don't want to do this. Fuck it, let's not do it. Ta-da! That's the reason why the Bolshevik communists of the Soviet Union slaughtered way more than any Western power at that time period. Moving on. The Vietnamese, completely different people. They look different, they act different, they speak different language, as well as physical mannerisms, certain things you might do, like you wouldn't want to touch them on the, or, I don't know if it's that culture that does that, but certain cultures, you wouldn't want to pat someone on the back or pat them on the head, like you want to do different things, like you wouldn't exactly shake hands with certain people in the Middle East, especially with your left, you want to do it with your right. It's different because it's a different culture altogether. So, peace would be difficult. That's the reason why they were targeted. Aside from the fact that drugs can be plucked from that area, the best lands to get heroin are from the southeastern Orient. That's the reason why you can find it easy in India and China and Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand, Malaysia. Like, all these areas are perfect lands to make heroin. Now, to get all that heroin, how do you get it from the southeastern Orient all the way to the United States? Dead bodies. My grandfather had to give false intel that would get people killed in the most bloody battles so that he can take those bodies, stuff them full of drugs so he can ship it home to the United States. That's fucked up. My grandfather pretty much teared up when he was talking about this because he hated doing this. He was guilt-ridden for what he did, and he knew it. I mean, I could tell that man was so filled with guilt, he needed to speak all that he had, and thank the Lord that he did. Now, this wasn't just one action, one reaction. The CIA doesn't do that. It's not profitable. They want one thing done, one job, many outcomes. So they got drugs. They got dead GIs. What happens when you have a lot of dead people? Those who survive, that are still alive, are going to be afraid. That fear spreads like wildfire amongst our troops, which spreads division. More division, not just between us, but between the culture that we're supposedly trying to save. You see? This kind of action kept a division between us and them. It became us and them. That's the reason why it was so easy for people to go nuts and just want to slaughter a whole bunch of Vietnamese people just trying to live their lives. Because to them, they were all the same. They were all, just like now with people from the Middle East, they're all terrorists. Just glass the entire land. That's what fear does to you. Fear is a part of ignorance. It's the other face of it. Anyways, between the whites and non-whites, because also with our minorities, that division built because of it. You see, during that same time frame, we were having a lot of civil rights issues back at home. Now, you gotta understand, division was still happening even within our own armed forces. It was difficult for black people at that time frame to get recognized, not only for their rank, but what they've done in that time frame. That spreads hate and fear in and of themselves. Because look, now you're just thinking, fuck, I'm just cannon fodder to a bunch of these fucking crackers. Alright? Because that's how they were treated half the goddamn time. Hell, I remember, off topic, I remember being in Maryland, and talking to a guy at a frickin' farmer's market where this guy literally spoke Vietnamese, and he was a black American. I asked him, how did you learn this? I mean, it's very difficult to learn another language. He's like, I learned it in Vietnam. I'm like, oh, how'd that happen? You were just, talking to the locals? I was left in the camps. He was a POW, and he was left there to die. And eventually, when he learned the language, the customs, and traditions of those people, they let him go. They let him be free. And they treated him as an equal. You know how sad that is? We left a fellow soldier to die, and our enemies were more respectful to him than our own people. Now, take that. Plus, add in this. The drugs we took were dumped in the black and other minority communities. You ever wonder why we have such a gang fucking problem? Well, there you go. We caused it. We created it. And I'm not meaning we as in white people. I mean we as the United States. We as in the us, the U.S., the government itself, not the people themselves. But their people were used as pawns for exactly that. That's what my grandfather had to do. And when he was here in the United States, he'd put on a little DEA badge whenever that came along. And whenever they found a shitload of drugs and heroin, guess what he would do? He'd waltz right over, take the drugs, and redistribute it back to the communities. Ta-da! A cycle of issues and problems. Problem, reaction, solution. Right there, the Hegelian dialectic. People, if you still believe in the left-right paradigm, you are a slave to the system. If you still believe that you need to give mandatory patriotism or mandatory respect for whether it be government people, military, or police, you're stuck in the system that my grandfather helped to build. I want you to be free. He wanted you to be free. But he had to do what he had to do because he himself was stuck and enslaved to that system. And it started with his pride. Patriotism is pride, America. Wake up and smell the fucking ashes, because you're living in it. You can spray all you want. You can get fucking all you want. It doesn't change a goddamn thing. Excuse me. Anyways, so the police state rises, federal power grows, and last but not least, racial division, of course, furthers the divide. Which they themselves purposely started because they want idols out of the gang communities and other such communities to be the idols of the people. They wanted idolism. They wanted false gods among men. To do that, you need popularity amongst people who are pretty much infamous. And when an entire culture called gang culture rises from those ashes started by the CIA, the DEA, the FBI, well, there you go. There's your problem. The drug war fed itself. That money helped to bring more terrorism, more death and destruction and drugs across the fucking world. And here we are, America. Red flag laws, looking to find people like me, little old me, conspiracy theorist, because I might be a domestic terrorist. Grow up. Free yourself. Starting here. Find the Lord. Repent. The time is coming upon us, and the third temple is coming. Satan's already here. Look for his Antichrist, and you will see. God bless. and good luck to thee.